For centuries, we have been taught a distorted history about black people. But what if I told you that all of this is wrong? Jasmine Price died for 12 minutes, met Jesus, and what he revealed about the true identity of black people will leave you speechless. Jasmine, how did it all begin? My name is Jasmine Price. I am 46 years old, and I am a teacher in Georgia. Today, I want to share with you something that completely changed my life. I want to tell you what Jesus showed me about the true origins of black people. What I saw and felt on that journey transformed my understanding of black history and its connection to the divine. Oh, it happened on August 4th, 2020. For months, I'd been struggling with inexplicable fatigue, constant pain, and a sense of exhaustion that had no name. I went to doctors, had tests, but nothing seemed to justify what I felt. I would wake up in the morning without energy, drag through the days, and at night, instead of resting, I felt even more worn out. That night, everything seemed normal. I was sitting in the living room with my husband, talking about the day, listening to the children's stories about school. Everything was routine until suddenly, it wasn't. It was as if someone had turned off the world's light. Everything went dark. I heard no warning. Just complete emptiness. And then, in the blink of an eye, I was somewhere else. I was no longer in my body, but I didn't feel fear either. On the contrary, I felt light, as if I had been freed from a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. I looked around and saw that I was in a vast, infinite space where everything seemed made of light. But it wasn't ordinary light. It was alive, enveloping, as if it embraced me. That's when I heard him. Jesus was there, right in front of me. You know, he wore a white robe that seemed made of light itself. And his eyes, oh, his eyes, they weren't just eyes. They were windows to something much greater. Something that saw me entirely, every pain, every doubt, every joy I had ever felt. I felt an indescribable love. A love that doesn't demand, that doesn't weigh, that simply is. For a moment, we were silent. I wanted to speak, wanted to ask so many things. But the words seemed too small for everything I felt. You know? Then, he smiled and said, "Welcome, Jasmine. You are here for a reason." My mind bubbled with questions. But before I could utter a word, Jesus began to speak. And what he revealed to me in the following minutes would forever change the way I saw the world. The first truth he showed me was about the curse of Ham. If you grew up in a Christian environment, you've probably heard this story. For centuries, it was said that black people carried a curse inherited from Ham, Noah's son. This idea was used to justify slavery, segregation, and so many other forms of injustice. I also grew up hearing this. Not that my family was racist, but it was a narrative that was present, embedded in the culture, accepted without question. But there, before Jesus, I realized there was something much deeper and truer about this story, something the world didn't want us to know. And that's when he began to show me the truth, a truth that would change everything. But then Jesus looked into my eyes and said something that made me hold my breath. "Jasmine, the curse of Ham has been completely misinterpreted for centuries." My mind went into shock. "What do you mean?" Since I was little, I heard that black people were descendants of Ham and somehow carried his curse. But Jesus continued, "The curse was never about black people. Never." I felt my heart race. He then explained that the curse did not fall on Ham, but on Canaan, his son. The biblical passage from Genesis chapter 9 talks about Noah, who, in a moment of vulnerability, got drunk and ended up exposing himself before his sons. Ham saw his father in that state and did not take the correct action to protect him. As a consequence, Noah pronounced a curse, but not on Ham. The curse was cast upon Canaan, his son. And then, as if a curtain had been torn before my eyes, I understood something that was never taught to me correctly. The curse of Canaan had nothing to do with skin color. Jesus showed me that this biblical passage was a prophetic message about the descendants of Canaan and the challenges they would face in the future. But at some point in history, this truth was twisted, and this distortion was used as justification for centuries of discrimination, slavery, and injustices against Black people. This was never about race, Jasmine. Jesus said firmly, it was about disobedience. It was about spiritual choices. Sin is not about skin. I stood there, absorbing every word. It was as if, for the first time, the pieces of a puzzle finally fit together. Jesus continued walking beside me, and then began to show me the truth about the origins of Black people. For so long, I carried within me the idea that Black people somehow had an inferior position, that there was something in them that made them less deserving. But what Jesus revealed to me at that moment destroyed those beliefs and made me see a much greater reality. Jasmine, he said with sweetness in his voice, you were taught to believe wrong things about African people. But now, I want to show you the truth. And then he began to talk about the descendants of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, and Put. Cush, he explained, was the ancestor of the great African peoples, those who formed powerful kingdoms and left their mark on history. Then he showed me the kingdom of Cush, which flourished alongside Egypt, a majestic civilization, rich in culture, knowledge, and strength. Their history is not one of servitude, but of greatness. Jesus said with a sparkle in his eyes, they were kings, queens, builders of empires. Their heritage is not of curse, but of honor. It was then that he revealed something that left me speechless. The name Cush meant black in biblical language. Jesus looked at me and said, the term black was never a condemnation. In the ancient world, it symbolized strength, beauty, power. He paused, allowing the grandeur of his words to settle within me. Blackness was never a curse, Jasmine. Oh, dear you. It has always been a sacred identity, a divine blessing, but over time, men distorted this truth. The tears came without me being able to contain them, because for the first time I understood what was never taught to me, and that changed everything. Through Jesus, my view of the world changed completely. I finally understood that the descendants of Cush have always been part of a much greater divine plan than I could ever imagine. These people, Jesus said with serenity, were graced with wisdom, leadership, and a special favor from God. The African nations of Ethiopia, Cush, Nubia, and Egypt were not cursed, as many came to believe. On the contrary, they were divinely inspired and chosen for a grand purpose in antiquity. It was then that he revealed something that profoundly impacted me. The true importance of ancient Egypt. Thou so true is so deserted. Since childhood, I felt an almost inexplicable attraction to the history of Egypt. The mysteries of the pyramids, the pharaohs, the ancient gods, and the vastness of their knowledge always enchanted me, but I never understood how much this civilization was connected to the divine history of humanity. Jesus noticed my restlessness and smiled gently. Jasmine, Egypt was never just a place of oppression and slavery, he said. It was the cradle of civilization, a center of knowledge and wisdom that was shared with the world. He then explained that Mizraim, one of Ham's sons, was the patriarch of the Egyptians. The Egyptians, he continued, they were not just a powerful nation. They were part of the same blessed lineage as Cush. They were a chosen people, tasked with preserving and spreading great knowledge and wisdom that would later influence countless other civilizations. I felt my heart expand with every word. Egypt was not just a place of servitude, Jesus continued. It was a source of divine wisdom, a place where ancient secrets were revealed, where profound teachings were recorded, and where the pharaohs and priests carried with them knowledge that helped shape the future of the world. For the first time, I saw Egypt beyond the narrative of slavery and suffering that I was always taught. Jesus looked into my eyes, his expression full of understanding. I know the pain you felt thinking of Egypt, as a symbol of the Israelites' slavery. But Jasmini, the Egyptians, even having strayed into idolatry, were originally chosen to spread wisdom and light to all nations. Their role in the world was much greater than just being seen as an oppressive empire. As I stood before him, absorbing every word, something profound changed within me. I spent so many years feeling displaced without understanding my true place in the history of humanity. But now, Jesus was showing me a much greater truth, a truth that dated back to the beginning of time. Then, he showed me another devastating reality, how the scriptures had been misinterpreted, how distortions about race and identity were used to fuel centuries of pain, discrimination, and suffering. But now is the time for healing, he said firmly. The truth needs to be known. The curse of Ham was never a real curse. It was a great misinterpretation, a spiritual distortion that was used to subjugate, deceive, and obscure the beauty of the Black people's heritage. As Jesus continued to guide me through that glorious space, I felt an indescribable peace. It was as if all the wounds I carried within me began to heal. The truth was not just liberating, it was healing. And at that moment, I knew. Everything I had believed until that day needed to be rewritten. But Jesus was not finished. He looked at me with his infinite patience and guided me even deeper into the mysteries of the divine origin of Black people. Jasmini, the story is much greater than what you knew. He said, I want you to see the grandeur of the heritage of strength, wisdom, and love that has been passed down through the generations of my people. And then before me appeared a living, vibrant tapestry full of colors and light. It was a representation of the great African civilizations, Ethiopia, Nubia, the Kingdom of Kush, Egypt, nations that emerged with glory, all descendants of Kush. Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep going. Before continuing, just one request. Subscribe to the channel. This helps us a lot to continue. These nations, Jesus explained, were central to God's plan for humanity. Long before confusion, separation, and oppression, they played an essential role in shaping the world. It was then that I saw the kingdom of Kush stretching along the Nile River, its cities shining in the golden sun of antiquity. The people of Kush were not only strong in war, but also deep in spirituality. They were guardians of sacred knowledge. Jesus said, their understanding of creation and divine laws was a gift from God, designed to enlighten all nations. Before my eyes, magnificent artifacts, ancestral temples, and scrolls with writings that spoke of an intimate connection with God appeared, a connection that was forgotten or ignored over the centuries. And then I saw the great queens of Nubia, women who ruled not only with power but with wisdom and grace. Queen Amanirenas, the warrior who faced Rome, Queen Makeda, known to many as the legendary Queen of Sheba. These women were not just rulers. Jesus said, they were spiritual guides. They understood the divine call on their lives and led their people with love, courage, and wisdom. They are precious in my eyes. My soul was filled with reverence. Then, I saw Egypt rise before me, a living testimony of divine favor. Jesus showed me that although Egypt later deviated into idolatry, in its beginnings, it was a beacon of knowledge and spirituality. Egypt was a cradle of wisdom, he explained. It was not created to be a symbol of slavery, but rather a place where divine wisdom would flourish. Then I saw Moses, the great prophet, still a baby, being placed in the basket that sailed down the Nile. But now I understood. He was not raised in Pharaoh's palace by chance. Moses was placed in Egypt, Jesus said, because he needed to learn the great Egyptian wisdom. He was called to free my people, not only. But Egypt, in its early days, was meant to be a center of light, a source of knowledge that would bless many nations. I was speechless. What the world calls idolatry in Egypt was initially a quest for the divine. Jesus continued, "They tried to understand the mysteries of God, but over the centuries they lost their way. Still, the foundation of their wisdom was true. And then, I began to see how the descendants of Africa were spread across the world. What we know as the African diaspora, the forced displacement of millions of people through slavery, was not something random. But before I could fully understand, Jesus was preparing to show me something even deeper, something that would explain not only the past, but the future of his people. Hein. Everything began to make sense. Slavery, the African diaspora, the relentless struggle for dignity and justice. None of this had been ordained by God. But even in the deepest suffering, the African people carried something that no one could take away, an unbreakable spiritual strength. Jesus showed me something powerful. Oh, wonder said you wow. Slavery was not a divine punishment, nor a destiny set by God. It was a reflection of human greed and corruption. But even in that pain, something shone within the African people, a light that could not be extinguished. Jasmine, the African people are not just a people of survivors, Jesus said, his voice firm and full of love. They are my warriors, my children. They carry a divine legacy that has spanned millennia. I felt these words penetrate my soul like a sacred fire. Then I saw images of great spiritual leaders, men and women, who, through the centuries, kept that divine spark alive. I saw the abolitionists, those who fought for the liberation of the enslaved. I saw Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, and I understood. These people were not just fighting for freedom. They were fighting for justice, for something much greater. Something that was aligned with the heart of God. And God never abandoned his people. Even in the darkest moments, he raised prophets, leaders, and visionaries to speak the truth and guide humanity to a better path. But then, Jesus led me to an even deeper understanding. I always wondered about the spirituality of my ancestors. Why they honored their ancestors. Why they had rituals connected to nature, the sun, the earth, the water. These practices were always seen as something separate from God, as if they were pagan beliefs. But Jesus revealed something surprising to me. Jasmine, he said with a serene look, your ancestors knew something that many have forgotten. They understood that they were connected to the earth, the sky, the stars, all of creation. They knew that the divine is present in all things, and everything can be used to honor God. It was then that he showed me the true meaning of honoring the ancestors. I saw images of African families gathered, telling stories about those who came before. I saw celebrations full of music and dance, where the elders passed knowledge to the younger ones. And Jesus explained, honoring your ancestors was never about worshiping them. It was about recognizing their role in the divine story. It was about remembering the wisdom and love they left for you. It was about keeping alive the connection with those who paved the way before you. Oh, I was moved. For so long, this tradition was misunderstood. It was demonized, treated as something contrary to God. But there, before Jesus, I saw that it was nothing like that. He then showed me an ancestral ritual. People danced around a bonfire, sang, played drums, but that was not an act of idolatry. It was an act of communion with God. I am present in all things, Jesus said. Oh, my presence flows in the earth, in the wind, in the water, and in the fire. The rituals you see are not empty acts. They are expressions of the connection between the Creator and his creation. And suddenly, I understood. The African people have always had a deep connection with the divine. They have always seen God in every element of nature, in every beat of the drum, in every prayer lifted to the sky. But over time, this truth was distorted. The colonizers demonized African spiritual practices. They erased their stories, turned their faith into something forbidden, banned their songs, their dances, their traditions. But the truth never ceased to exist. And there, before Jesus, I finally saw clearly. The faith of the African people has always been alive, always connected with God. And now, it was time for the world to remember. At that moment, my understanding expanded completely. I realized that spirituality did not belong to a single people, a single religion, a single tradition. It was a living universal connection that could manifest in different ways, but that always emanated from the same divine source. My journey with Jesus was not yet over. And he wanted me to understand something even greater, the true meaning of the struggle of Black people throughout history. He showed me scenes of the pains and battles that African people and their descendants faced: slavery, segregation, racism. The struggle for freedom, equality, and justice was not just a political or social issue. It was a divine call. "Jasmine," Jesus said, his voice firm but full of love. The struggle of the Black community is not just a battle for human rights. It is a spiritual battle, a struggle for the restoration of divine truth and justice on earth. They are fighting for something that has always been theirs: their dignity, their honor, and their place in my kingdom. They are my children, my beloved, and I have heard their cries. My heart tightened. For centuries, the Black people endured unimaginable pains. But Jesus was showing me that none of this had been in vain. Every struggle, every sacrifice was part of a much larger plan. The quest for equality and freedom was, in fact, a spiritual movement, a call from God to restore the truth, to bring light where there was once darkness. Then Jesus showed me something that took my breath away. I saw the faces of great Black spiritual leaders. Not just pastors and missionaries, but also abolitionists, freedom fighters, voices of resistance, like Harriet Tubman, who freed hundreds of enslaved people. I saw Martin Luther King Jr., who marched for justice driven by an unshakable faith. I saw Nelson Mandela, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, all of them guided by that divine spark that never went out. The world saw these struggles as social movements, Jesus said. But, in fact, they were manifestations of my plan. They were expressions of the divine purpose reflecting my justice, my love, and my truth. Then he made me see something even greater. The struggle of Black people was not just about the past, it was about the future. Jasmine, the restoration of my people will come in a time of great awakening. He said, the truth about who they are and what their purpose is will be revealed. And when that happens, the world will see the unity and restoration that have been forgotten for so long. It was when I had a vision of the return of Jesus. The sky opened in a bright light. He returned to restore everything, to bring justice, peace, and reconciliation to all peoples. But in a special way, to those who had been oppressed, marginalized, forgotten. And the truth, which had been hidden for so long, finally shone for all to see. The heritage of Black people was never one of shame. It was always one of glory. It was always a sacred gift from God. It was then that I began to feel my spirit returning to my body. I felt immense peace, a deep sense of gratitude. What I had witnessed, no one could ever take from me. When I opened my eyes, I was back. The hospital room was silent. The doctors looked at me in awe. You were clinically dead for over 12 minutes. One of them told me. But I knew I had experienced something that went far beyond science. I had seen the truth, and now I knew I could never live the same way again. Huh. I saw the divine plan unfold before me. And what struck me the most was not just the grandeur of this truth, but the love and mercy of Jesus, who showed me something I could never have imagined. The Black people have always had a sacred role in the kingdom of God. If you are hearing this story now, I want you to know, what I experienced was not just for me. This truth was revealed for all of us. For centuries they said that Black people were cursed, but Jesus showed me that this was a distortion, a lie that spread to keep us away from the truth. They were chosen with a legacy of strength, wisdom, and divine purpose. Our struggles were never in vain. Every battle, every pain, every injustice faced is part of a greater purpose. A spiritual battle for truth, for justice, for restoration. But listen well. Healing is coming. Restoration is on the way. If you are Black, know that you are part of something grand. You are not a survivor. You are a warrior. You carry within you a light that can never be extinguished. You are loved, chosen, powerful. And if you come from another background, this message is also for you. Because the truth that Jesus showed me is not just about one people. It's about humanity, about unity, about healing, about love. And together we can transform the world through truth, through understanding, and above all through love. Jasmini, thank you very much for sharing this transformative experience. Your testimony reminds us of something profound. The truth always finds a way to shine, no matter how long it has been hidden. And for you who watched until now, I want to leave a powerful message. In John chapter 8, verse 32, Jesus said, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." If this story touched your heart, share this message. A truth needs to be spread. May God greatly bless your life, and may His light always shine until the next video.